All right, we're going to go over our class reading today, and we're going to discuss our key vocabulary words. Before we begin our book, remember we're trying to think of events as things as they happen during our story. We're still working on our comprehension of what we read, so we can give a good explanation of what we have read, what we know we're going to read, and what we think we're going to read. So, our first word today for our comprehension of vocabulary is going to be before. What happened before, which means the pre-events of the story we're about to read, which means, of course, if we're thinking about what all the other things it means is como antes que pasó algo, because after comes, of course, before. After. This is what's happened after we've begun the story and what we think is going to happen. We look for clues in events and we see as the story is progressing, what do we think is going to happen at the end. Antes, antes y después. ¿Qué va a pasar antes de la historia y después qué pasa en el fin de la historia? Después, cuando se termina la historia. Y con estas palabras va, our next key vocabulary we're thinking of is changes, cambio, or cambios, changes. As the story progresses, remember, we have our middle that goes in between. Uh-oh, my word fell down. Excuse me, kiddos. Get my word. Changes. Better. Hopefully that doesn't change. Hee hee. Good joke. Think about how things change, not just in the story, but when we're in class. We learn about math. We figure out how to do math. Then we know how to do the problems. We don't need any more help. Changes. You learn how to do one step of a math problem, or you learn to do a whole bunch of math problems. Of course, un cambio, one change, multiple changes, muchos cambios. Acá pasan diferentes cosas en la historia. Entonces tenemos que fijar qué vamos a buscar para las cosas que nos va a decir en la historia qué cambió, qué pasó, por qué es importante los cambios, por qué ocurrieron. So when looking at the story and we keep reading, think about why we had the change of events, what ended up happening, what was important that we need to look for in the story as we're going through page by page in the story are together. And then the two final words that we have are going to be generous, generoso, which means when someone gives you something, you say, "Oh, thanks, bestie. I really appreciate that." Oh, Mr. Hess, we're getting an extra half hour of Fun Friday. We are really happy with you being so generous. Or you can use generosity, but you will say, "Thank you, sir. You're being very generous." And when you guys give me things in the morning, or you come in and we were talking and you just give me something on random because you guys like bringing me things that you shouldn't do. You're being generous. And for you being generous, I am grateful. This is our other word we're looking for in our story. We have generous, we have grateful, we have before, after, and we have changes. Después, antes, lo agradezco, generoso, y cambio o cambios. And as we're going along, we will use our trusty graphic organizers. So we have our Venn diagram. We will write down things we think are going to be happening to make our cambios, our changes, down here on the bottom. In the middle, we're going to be writing the same, el mismo, and then on each side, we'll put diferente, what's different, y el mismo, what's the same. That way, as we go through the story, what do we notice happens? What do we think is going to happen? And when you think you have a guess, or you just, before you go putting it in the middle, you get, hold on, just wait. Getting carried away like we usually do. Think before you go filling everything out. Write down in the middle, once we've gone through at least halfway through the story, what do you notice doesn't change? Does somebody move away? Does somebody get married? Does somebody get a big present? Does somebody get a gift? Does something bad happen? Does something good happen? Those cambios. Focus on what you notice are the changes of before and after. You'll put down in the middle what you think is going to stay the same as once we're almost through the end of the story. Here you'll write down what happened before, and in the story when we're reading, you'll figure out by what's happening whether it's before or it's after. So you can then fill in your pre-events and your post-events, which just means before and after. It's just a fancy way of saying it. So you learn something new right there when we're going over it. The book is called A Chair for My Mother, and we can all relate to things like this, I think. I know my mom had a favorite chair she used to sit in when I was a young boy, and it's, well, family, which again we can also relate to. Todos tenemos mamás y papás que trabajan muchas horas para cuidarlos todos los días. Y yo estoy seguro que ellos tienen, los dejan, se van en la mañana a trabajo y ustedes los miran y dicen, hey, mamá, ya también a la tarde, ok, y dice, que te tengas un buen día, hijo. I'll see you later. Have a good day. Do your best you can. And you come to school and you do the best you can every single day. So, again, we can kind of relate to this story because we're talking about someone's mom. We all have moms. We all have moms, and most of us have a mom or a dad or have someone who loves us and takes care of us every single day. I will start reading. We're looking at the picture. We'll see it's a diner or un restaurant. It's called the Blue Diner or the Blue Tile Diner. I'm sorry. And there's a little girl standing there. There's a lady inside working in the building. You can see her through the window. And I shall begin reading. My mother works as a waitress in the Blue Tile Diner. After school, sometimes I go to meet her there. And her boss, Josephine, gives me a job too. I wash the salts and peppers and fill the ketchups. One time, salts and peppers, that's the little containers, so she washes them out so the stuff don't get crusty in there and everything. One time I peeled all the onions for the onion soup. When I finish, Josephine says, good work, honey, and pays me. And every time I put half my money into the jar. I don't know how many of us at home parents have a jar. My mom used to have a big jar. She used to always put, pesetas y micros y dimes y sometimes me echaba el cambio de los pesos y el 5 y algún 10 a veces por dentro del jarro. My mom would sometimes put change in a jar and just put it away, put it in there. Just added them up, the money gradually. And then when it all got real full, she'd take it to the bank and get the cash for it. Then now our next page, we see there's a jar. We'll notice there's just some change in it. And on the other side, we see there's some change piled up. I know this brings us memories of our math lessons we had when we were learning to count change and money. I will read our next page, but let's focus and think. We're seeing an important thing here. The author has put this jar in the book for a reason. It has something to do with what's going on. It has something to do with the situation that's going to develop. Clues that we look for in the story. Things we think are going to happen. So if I were you, I would write down the jar, y cambio, with a little change underneath it. That has something to do with what we're going along as we're following the story. It takes a long time to fill a jar this big. Every day when my mother comes home from work, I take down the jar. My mama empties all of her change from tips out of her purse for me to count, then we push all of the coins into the jar. A tip is money people leave you on the table when you work at a restaurant. Sometimes it can be $1, sometimes it's 5. Generous people leave 10, maybe $12 sometimes. It depends on the people. It's hard work. Sometimes my mama is laughing when she comes home from work. Sometimes she's so tired she falls asleep while I count the money out in the piles. Some days she has lots of tips, some days she only has a little, and she looks worried. But every evening, every single shiny coin goes into the jar. Mom works really hard, as a lot of us can relate to our parents working hard every day. And we know we come home, when we come to school, they want us to do the best we possibly can. That's why I went to school. I always did the best I could because I wanted to make my mom happy with me. But we también tenía la chancla, so I had to do pretty good. All right, next page. You see a picture? That kind of reminds me of my mom. My mom worked really hard. She falls asleep in that chair, right there. Just like Mr. Hess does when he gets home from work and his kids come and wake him up and say they need something or they're hungry or there's a problem with the two of them arguing over something silly like they tend to do. And there's Grandma and there's La Niña. Que nos está contando la historia. I believe the little girl is probably the author. That's probably the lady Vera, who wrote the book. We sit in the kitchen to count the tips. Usually Grandma sits with us too. While we count, she likes to hum. Often she has money in her old leather wallet for us. Whenever she gets a good bargain on tomatoes or bananas or something, she buys and puts by the savings, and they go into the jar. So grandma helps contribute to the jar too, helping out the family. And if you look at the picture, there's a refrigerator back there, and kind of look like my kitchen. I don't know what your kitchen looks like, but I know we had a little old house and stuff, and sink and all that. My mom used to make the stuff up back there on the counter. You can see that little clock and things, and that's where my mom used to make things. And we're making the tortillas and the frijoles and carnitas and all that good stuff that I liked to eat when I was a young man. Our next page we have, what do you think that is? That big old red thing. I'll hold this thing a little better so you can see it. I'm all crooked by my angle. Oops, don't do that. Oop, I'm still not getting what I want. Camera, cooperate. Yes, it looks like a couch. But to me, when I was holding it up before, one of you, yeah, Emily said it looked kind of like a corazon. It kind of looks like a corazon to me. It kind of looks like a heart, which is kind of interesting. And maybe that's what I see when I'm reading the story. At least that's what I think. I don't know what you guys think, but that's what it reminds me. It kind of reminds me of a heart because it makes you feel comfortable, makes you feel at ease, and it's what you feel, so you feel pretty good. When we can't get a single other coin into the jar, we are going to take out all the money and go buy a chair. Yes, a chair, a wonderful, beautiful, fat sofa armchair. We will get one covered in velvet with roses all over it. We are going to get the best chair in the whole world. That is because our old chair burned out. And here we have a clue in our story of what's going on. You'll notice she used burned up. There was a fire in our other house. All our chairs burned. So did our sofa, and so did everything else. That wasn't such a long time ago. So what do we? So when we say something happened, what do we mean if we know something happened? Right, correct. Before this happened before, and now she's talking about after. And when we look at changes, right, exactly. That was cambios. Things happened that changed, so that she no longer had the chair. That they no longer had that kitchen. She never had that beautiful love chair that she'd like to sit in. That's good work, guys. Good work. Now contamos la historia. Now she's letting us know what happened before. My mother and I were coming home from buying new shoes. I had new sandals. She had new pumps. Uh-oh. We were walking to our house from the bus. We were looking at everyone's tulips. She was saying she liked red tulips, and I was saying I like yellow ones. Then we came to our block, and there's what she described happening. With bomberos, and there looked like Abuelita running to them, or our tia or something like that. Right outside our house stood two big red fire engines. I could see lots of smoke. Tall orange flames came out of the roof. All the neighbors stood in a bunch across the street. Mama grabbed my hand and we ran. My Uncle Sandy saw us and ran to us. Mama yelled, "Where's Mother?" I yelled. "Where's my grandmother?" My Aunt Ida waved and shouted, "She's here, she's here. She's okay, don't worry." Grandma was all right. Our cat was safe too, although it took a while to find her. But everything else in our whole house was spoiled. And then we look and we see what that pretty house used to look like with all that stuff on the walls. It's all fire. After. Then we saw what was before, now we see after. Cambios. Cambios. What was left of the house was burned to charcoal and ashes. We went to stay with my mother's sister, Aunt Ida, and Uncle Sandy. Then we were able to move into the apartment downstairs. We painted the walls yellow. The floors were all shiny, but the rooms are very empty. She said they were very empty. So, what is one way we can exactly? Very good. Very good, Allison. It is full before. Cambios. The walls were yellow, and then we had the fire, and everything was dark and empty. We had changes, cambios. The next page shows us a whole bunch of things going on. And here's where our next two words that we were talking about are going to come into play. Actually, three. So I must have some mistaken. The first day we moved in, the neighbors brought pizza and cake and ice cream, and they brought a lot of other things too. The family across the street brought a table and 3 kitchen chairs. The very old man next door gave us a bed from when his children were little. My other grandpa brought us his beautiful rug. My mother's sister Sally had made us red and white curtains. Mama's boss Josephine brought pots and pans, silverware, and dishes. My cousin brought me her own stuffed bear. How lucky, huh? Everyone clapped and my grandmother made a speech. You are all the kindest people, she said, and we thank you very, very much. It's lucky we're young and we can all start over again. Now, we don't see the word mentioned here, but when we are thankful for something, what are we? Exactly. We're grateful because people were what? Generous. They gave us things. So we are grateful for what they did and we are generous for what they did. And the other word I was talking about that I forgot we had here are changes, cambios. The apartment goes from being empty and burned out and depressing and sad to look like a home again. A happy house where everyone can sit down, mom can rest her feet, grandma can help come to change. And then we come to otro cambio, grandísimo. Ahora se fijan que está lleno de cambio, lleno de pesetas y nickels y dimes, está lleno de dinero. Porque todavía anda trabajando su mamá todos los días y la abuelita todavía le está trayendo cambio. So we see another big change. The change jar is full of money. It looks like it's going to be time to go get a new chair, isn't it? Thank you for your time and attention.